Located on the city's west side, tucked between Old Coors Road and New Coors Boulevard, south of Central Avenue and north of Bridge, the Alamosa neighborhood was once part of the historic Atrisco Land Grant, one of New Mexico's largest and oldest grants. But if residents have their way, it will most be remembered for its spirit of activism, which transformed it from a crime-ridden subdivision to a model of community organizing. Alamosa began as an affordable working-class neighborhood in the late 1950s. It was attractive to young families on a tight budget.
When we bought this house in 1960, my husband and myself and my oldest son moved here in February. And there was nothing here. It was all open field. There wasn't even any pavement or sidewalks or curbs or anything. It was just dirt roads. We looked at this house and I liked the kitchen because it was big. And I liked the area because it was away from the city, you know, from the mainstream. So we moved in here. It was really brand new, you know. And we didn't have, like I said, I think I was the only one that had a phone at the time because all our kids were raised together, and we all shared one phone. They'd call and they'd come over. My kid's sick, use the phone. Okay, so we didn't have walls, our brick walls or fences or anything, you know, so we just kind of got together that way.
We were living in the North Valley, and we always wanted to raise our kids out of town, more or less, that they would have open space. And we were looking and we found this area which had just been newly built about 5 years. So we found the house next door to Cecilia. And we loved the area because there was a lot of space for our children. They used to go play, like she said, right here in the desert. And we could see them from our house. It was so peaceful.
But the same couldn't be said for the rest of the neighborhood.
In 1964 is when we bought this house. And we've been here in this particular house ever since. There were a few houses, and the street was paved on one side, on that side, and this side was still just dirt. The school is about three blocks from here. Yeah. Matter of fact, when we moved here, to show you there was nothing much, Robert and I could stand on the front porch and watch them walk to school, make sure they got there safely. There are apartment buildings up there. Well, all of that was vacant, nothing but weeds, and so people would just dump their trash. And of course, we had kids. We didn't want them playing in the trash. He and some other neighbors would clean it up because it was a mess. And Central didn't have that much business on that street. It was mostly people hanging out. No, we didn't even go to the Central by ourselves, you know, that kind of thing. Because, people panhandling, and of course the prostitutes were out on Central. And, we just avoided that.
As the neighborhood matured, problems worsened.
I moved in this neighborhood probably when I was 13 years old. Well, I was growing up in this community. It was probably one of the toughest communities in the city. I remember very clearly, the gunshots daily, the fights, the drug dealings going on in the daylight.
My wife and I moved into the neighborhood in 1975. I just gotten married, and it was our first home, and the house was very affordable, recently built, and we really didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And both of us are moving in from the South Valley, so we're used to not having a whole lot of amenities, so we didn't see any stark differences then.
We were just excited until a few years later when public housing went up right across the street from us. So it sort of changed the landscape of stuff, and that's when we started having problems.
So that became the Colonia Guadalupana, which we found out were folks that had been displaced from the South Parelas redevelopment. And so we had a lot of folks, not only from there, but other parts of the city that moved in. The neighborhood was already somewhat unstable because it's a poor neighborhood. Let's just face it, it's not one of the more well-off neighborhoods in the city. And so with that, you have all the concurrent social ills that come with it. And so we really felt that at that point in time, the real match to the fire was that public housing units, which came in with no social supports, and then it just got out of control really quickly.
The police department, there's record of it. Police department wouldn't come in here unless they had backup. Fire department the same, unless they had police backup, wouldn't come into the neighborhood. It was a pretty crazy neighborhood.
It immediately became apparent within a year or two that the neighborhood was much more violent than what we had ever imagined. Within the first 2 years of our living in that home, our two neighbors were killed, shot, and drug deals gone bad immediately across the street from us.
Another time, a body was found inside a car just across the street from us from an overdose. We started hearing gunshots. There was different episodes that happened that we were just, oh, this is not quite what we thought it was going to be.
The city asked Chris Baca's agency, Youth Development Incorporated, to bring social service programs to the neighborhood. YDI began by setting up a drop-in center in the projects.
The drop-in center was something that actually one of my former co-workers who has now passed on, Mr. Ted Gallegos, was actually the person involved wholeheartedly with that. Ted was probably the most unique character we had in this organization, not only because he worked wholeheartedly with kids. Everybody knew Ted, all the kids respected him. But he was one of those kids that came from maybe the wrong side of the fence and was involved in the wrong activity. Having him, knowing what the other kids were doing because he was there, made it unique. And so with having his expertise, his knowledge, this thing became a success.
He was serving probably 500 kids a week through there. He worked miracles out of that place.
It was very clear to me then that social issues and housing and community and economic development were inextricably linked. You couldn't do one without the other.
YDI brought in a variety of programs, from drug and gang intervention to job training. While the programs made some impact, it appeared at the time to be just a Band-Aid. It would be up to the residents to take back their neighborhood.
We decided to join the neighborhood association. For one, it was because either we were going to move out of this neighborhood or we were going to stay in, but we had to make a difference. Because if we were not going to move, we realized the challenges we were facing. We realized that if we were going to raise our kids in this community, we had to try to make a difference.
The most important ingredient about changing anything is having people with heart, commitment, caring, and devoting the time. That's what actually changed the tide, the community part of it. Not the other stuff we were doing, even the programmatic stuff, isn't what changed it. But it became inextricably linked to community organizing because we had to look at where are the leaders, who are the natural leaders in this community, because they're there, I got, my wife says, can you and Ted, can you guys start a neighborhood association because this is something you can do? You'll have legal standing before the city. And we can at least have a voice, and they said yes, thank God.
We needed to start forming relationships with our city council, with our Bernalillo County commissioners, with our legislators, so that we could actually, get things done. We were in really dire need of social services. We had no dental, no medical, any sort of social services. So that was one of our main objectives, was to get a center, a community center that would serve our community. The other one was to start fighting crime.
There was just too much rampant crime that wasn't being addressed. We needed to get a communication guide, not guideline, but feed between us and APD. We also needed to get people not being afraid to respond to calling because they thought there was going to be retaliation. That was one big thing. But we managed to get them to say, well, you know what? If we stand up, people will see that we're not going to mess around here. We're going to want to clean up our neighborhood.
Each month, the police would come and meet at a different house. Like we would have them here this month. Next month it'd be at Clarissa's. And we would fix food. And we would feed them, you know, whoever was on that shift at that time. They would come. And matter of fact, that's what prompted a lot of people in the neighborhood to come visiting when they found out, you know, we were inviting the police, because we had some major problems at that time.
I had the midnight shift, the swing shift, and we'd feed them and they'd come and we'd invite the neighborhood, you know, at 10 o'clock or something, and we'd have the people come in and visit and find out about what's going on with the community.
And that was really powerful. And they would sit and eat and would talk about what could they do for this, or how can we improve different things. And it was amazing because I'd never seen anything like that. You know, you're in a community and you see the police driving the streets, you know, checking that. But no, they visited in our homes. And that's what impressed me.
I tried to make the monthly meeting, so I'm usually here, even before I was commander, as the lieutenant, I would come to the meeting. I have a really good relationship with Ms. Baca and the rest of the board, but I like to come to each meeting because different members come and go, so I can introduce myself, give them information. They like to know what the stats are and what's going on in their community, and then of course give me feedback of what they think the department should be doing in their neighborhoods to address their current needs or concerns. I strongly believe in community policing. I've pushed it in any area command I've worked in because it is successful. The reason why it's successful is your community trusts your decisions because you're having that open dialogue with them and they're willing to help. For example, like I tell them, hey, be a good neighbor, talk to your neighbors, tell them what you're seeing, tell them what's going on in these community meetings, tell them what we're doing because knowledge is power. But I'm very confident that when I tell them that, the information is going to flow out that way, just like they're confident that the information flows back towards the police department and their needs and concerns. The Southwest Area Command is definitely an area command that officers love to work in. We call it bids, they'll bid back. We have officers that stay in the area command for years before they'll move to any other area command, and I'm a perfect example of that. When I was a brand new rookie, the first chance I got to work the West Side, I came and became a bike officer and stayed here the majority of my career. And now that I'm back, I still have older officers, whether they're rehires or they just never left, that they just love it. They love working with the community and they feel like it's a home.
Where they're building are going to get to the point where...
As neighbors tackled crime through their partnership with law enforcement, the Neighborhood Association proceeded with its multi-pronged effort to rejuvenate the area and bring in much-needed services. The crown jewel of their efforts was the Alamosa Community Center.
It took the community 5 or 6 years to actually get it built. They had to change where the city wanted to put it and convince them that it had to go here. And there's a lot of organizing that went up to get that to happen. A lot of appearances before subcommittees and city councils and working with elected officials to get them to change their mind. So it was a 5 to 6 year process.
It took a lot of elbow grease and a lot of hard work and a lot of begging and pleading.
With surrounding neighborhood associations, we were able to start really advocating, and we did things in the empty field where the center now exists. We did things like bonfires, and we also formed immunization clinics in Winnebago with New Mexico Health, and so it started bringing the idea of the need into everyone, into all of our residents, into all of our people in power.
So we talked the city about, you know, we need health services, we need dental services. It'd be nice to have a library. You know, we need social services, we need public health. And so they understood then that this was more than just a community center that, in the traditional sense, that it just offered recreation. And so they immediately saw that and planned to expand the center to include all of these services. So right now it has all those services in that facility. it has First Choice, it has community dental, it has public health, it has WIC, it has YDI, it has a GED program, it has a library, you know, it has community meeting rooms. It's pretty fleshed out, fully fleshed out.
As the association pressed ahead, it created opportunities for other neighbors to blossom. One of them was Clarissa Pena, a longtime resident who had led efforts to improve Alamosa Elementary School and bring Dion's Pizza to the west side.
Ted Gallegos and his then wife Marie asked us to go to a couple of neighborhood association meetings, and we went and we listened. And you know, Chris Baca talks about me being in the back of the room. He says, all I remember is you in the back of the room, and you wouldn't speak, but you were always pregnant. And he says, but then once you decided to start talking, he says, you haven't shut up since. Being around such great leaders in our community, Chris and Jeanette just had an opportunity that not a lot of people have, is to really be able to surround myself with good mentors and people who have done some tremendous work. So I latched onto that, and I learned from them and got very involved. What led me to ever decide to run for city council? I think that really stems back to, you know, growing up, humble beginnings, lots of struggles, really, you know, family members, myself, you know, just looking for an opportunity to make a better life. And once I started having children and getting involved in the school, I knew, I didn't know quite how, but I knew that it was going to take me to seek out and do whatever I could to help open opportunities for my own children. And so getting involved in the neighborhood association was part of it. And then I got involved with SWAN, and SWAN is actually the Southwest Alliance of Neighbors, and that's everything south of I-40, west of the river, and the neighborhood associations. There's probably, on any given time, there's probably 15 active neighborhood associations. They had a rotating chair, and then eventually they decided just to elect, you know, have a board of directors and elect a president. And I was the president of SWAN until I was elected to the city council. If you look at the library, the new fire station, those are all a result of the work that community members did, coming together to solve issues. When they redistricted and happened to kind of be in the SWAN boundaries, I thought, you know, this is a real opportunity to, some of the work that we'd done has kind of plateaued, you know, and I felt like, you know, maybe this is a perfect time to actually be able to fund a lot of the projects that we've been working on for so long. And so I decided to run and won.
Granting access for people, for residents that are coming from the west to get into the river.
Today, Alamosa residents look to build on their successes and move forward on bringing economic development to their side of town. They are proud of their accomplishments and hope the lessons learned by their neighborhood association can serve as inspiration to others.
The Alamosa Neighborhood Association, believe it or not, to me is one of the stronger neighborhoods because we have some very active board members and community members that just won't quit. They keep pushing. I've actually had other neighborhood associations from the city call and ask me, how did you accomplish this? Where do I have to go? Who do I need to talk to? So I've been able to, with good direction, send them to the proper city authorities, the proper state, county authorities, because we've gone through that. Now we can help you.
I think our neighborhood association is one of the better ones in the city because we have good rapport with the police, the councilmen, the councilors, the commissioners, the senators, the representatives, even once in a while the governors and the mayor. So I think because we have been really worked hard with all of them, that's what makes our neighborhood special.
We're finally getting our due, I believe. You know, we're being heard, you know, more and more. You know, I think we are rattling enough cages over the last, 2 decades to have finally made a little dent in the process and being recognized as a community that is not going to just sit there and allow to be passed by anymore.
Without really having the in-depth history, I don't want to say like Alamosa is the be-all, do-all. I just know working in Alamosa, I'm sure there's other neighborhood associations who have done or accomplished a lot of similar work. But Alamosa, I think, has really been a model for neighborhood associations just because, they have formalized themselves. They've been around a very long time. They've learned how to actually get projects and projects done in the community. Everything they can do to try to better this neighborhood association, they've really worked hard, and it's really in the stats. Crime has gone down significantly. I think in the recent years we've had a surge again, but that comes with every neighborhood. But in terms of what they've been able to accomplish, the multi-service center, the improvements to the park, the medians landscaped. You come into this neighborhood, and although it's a poor neighborhood, you wouldn't know with the amenities that we have around here.
There's just so much that I've been proud of. There's also been times where I've just been, I can't do this anymore. It's like probably once a month. That it's a lot of work. It's a lot of really highs and plenty of lows where you feel sometimes defeated. But when you know that you're staying, this is your neighborhood and you're staying, and you have to do it for not just your own family, but for all our families and residents that live within the community.
So to see my neighborhood where I grew up in still be beautiful, still have wonderful neighbors who care, it makes me very happy and proud.
Probably the most important thing, I think, as a community, as an organized neighborhood association, and lessons that we've learned is it's very hard to get people to come out and volunteer first and foremost. We've been pretty lucky because we got a good, strong core of group of folks that got involved early on, and one of the rules that we instituted early on is that you couldn't leave the organization unless your name was in the obituary. So, unfortunately, we've seen that happen with some of our folks. But they couldn't leave prior. So Ted and Robert Hall are they're sitting back and they're laughing now and saying, we got out, you guys are still there. So here we are. So we've all committed to continue with this fight. So. If anything came out of it is to make sure that you support the folks that are willing to give of their time, and acknowledge and appreciate those folks as much as you possibly can, especially us as leaders or us that are willing to make a difference. Appreciate those folks that, unfortunately, otherwise wouldn't have a voice. So we got to appreciate those folks that are willing to step up.